Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, Nigeria is Africa's most populous country with an estimated 190 million people. It's also the largest oil producer on the continent, but the West African nation has been thrust into the spotlight in recent years for the wrong reason: the rise of the Islamic militant group Boko Haram. Africa 54's Edgecourt has our report.
The roots of Boko Haram's movement began decades before most people heard of the terrorist group following the shocking abduction of 276 girls from the Chibok school in 2014. The kidnappings triggered worldwide outrage and condemnation against the group. A recent discussion in Washington sought to shed some insight into the genesis of Nigeria's deadliest movement. Alexander Thurston, assistant professor of African Studies at Georgetown University, is the author of Boko Haram, the history of an African jihadist movement.
Boko Haram, of course, got its name from its opposition to Western-style schooling, which it regarded as immoral and anti-Islamic. That was also maybe part of a broader opposition to Western culture, Western civilization generally. And then Boko Haram's second key stance was an opposition to secular government, to government by constitution or government by parliamentary legislation.
This Islamic terrorist group has contributed and exacerbated a humanitarian crisis that is affecting tens of millions of people in the Lake Chad region, resulting in the massive displacement of people. Thurston's book looks at the history of Boko Haram.
It starts with the 1970s when the founders were growing up. Then moves on to look at the early political and religious history of the movement, then turns to the kind of way that the group became an underground, jihadist and guerrilla movement after a mass uprising that it launched in 2009.
In 2014-2015, the group carved out a territorial enclave in northeast Nigeria, where it continues to terrorize the region. Nigeria's military has been hunting the group without much success and is said to be losing trust among local communities. Jennifer Cook is director of the Africa program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
But there is a role for the military, even to provide the space for the kind of structural changes that you need done, even perhaps to pressure the leaders to take negotiations seriously. But getting that military balance right is the key.
Thurston, who is a scholar of religion with a particular focus on Islam and politics in Africa, says there are also political roots of Boko Haram and the Sharia movement.
It had the support of politicians, maybe some of whom were believers, some of whom were opportunists. It had the support of a lot of different kinds of Muslim scholars. Most of the people who backed the Sharia movement were not interested in jihadism. They weren't interested in building an Islamic state by force.
The group has reportedly weakened significantly in areas it controlled thanks to the multinational joint task force of Chad, Niger, Cameroon, Benin, as well as Nigeria's military.
You did see towns cheering the Nigerian military when they were liberated. I mean, you do see more kind of memorials to fallen soldiers and so forth. The military, no question, has committed egregious abuses, but I think it's still worth trying to pursue a policy of building trust between communities and the military.
February's abduction of schoolgirls in Dapchi by Boko Haram raises new fears that school-age children will stay at home as the group continues its trail of death and destruction, leaving communities in great fear of when and where it will strike next. Edgecourt, VOA News, Washington.
In a surprise meeting, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga met on Friday and agreed to work toward unifying the country after last year's divisive presidential election. The meeting came just hours before a visit by U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. The two Kenyan leaders, who spoke separately after the talks, acknowledged the country was heading in the wrong direction.
My brother and myself have therefore come together today to say this dissent stops here. We refuse to allow our diversity to kill our nation. We refuse to be the leaders under whose watch Kenya slid into a failed nation. This is a call to self-reflection. We have to look into ourselves and challenge our readiness to make the changes that will allow our institutional reforms to work. So long as we remain divided, acrimonious, selfish, and corrupt, no amount of institutional reform will better our lives.
And we have come to a common understanding, an understanding that this country of Kenya is greater than any one individual, and that for this country to come together, leaders must come together. Leaders must be able to discuss their differences. Leaders must be able to discuss freely and openly what ails our country, what is the reason and the cause for the ethnic divisions and frictions that we see across the country.
Well, Kenya was plunged into a political crisis after the Supreme Court annulled the August election due to irregularities, and Odinga and his supporters boycotted the second round in October. Odinga refused to recognize Kenyatta's win and in January held a rally where his supporters symbolically inaugurated the opposition leader as president. Now, on the streets of Nairobi, Kenyans also welcomed the leaders agreeing to work together.
For the meeting of today between the President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, it's so good because it's creating peace between the two tribes, that's the Luos and the Gikuyus. And it's one, we are under one unit building the nation.
It's a really good step towards harmonizing the country because the electioneering period has left us divided across the divide. His supporters of both sides, so I think it's a really good idea that they've met, and hopefully we can progress from this.
Well, if they resolve their issues, well, that is a good thing, because we need to move forward, and as a country, well, you know, the economy has been down, so if they resolve their issues, well, at least it will show that we are moving forward, and the issue to do with the election, it is behind us.
Well, independent political analyst Martin Ndati says the agreement on unification is significant for healing Kenyan politics. The devil will be in the details. We need to understand what exactly has been agreed upon, noting the Kenyan leaders' statements contained only generalities. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson arrived in Kenya on Friday evening and held a meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta in Nairobi. Tillerson had earlier made a stop in Djibouti, where he met local officials as well as U.S. defense officials. Now, we're always thrilled when... Okay. Well, now we are always so thrilled when, you send us your comments on social media. Let us know what you think about the stories we cover. So today I'll read some of your comments. Bashar M. Mahmoud from Dhaka, Bangladesh, saw our coverage of the war in Syria and was devastated. "Oh, where has the humanity gone?" he said. "Where are the humanitarian organizations? Don't they see what's occurring in Syria?" We reported on Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari's visit to Yobe, the northeastern state where 110 schoolgirls were abducted by suspected members of Islamic militant group Boko Haram. Akidri Dennis from Uganda said, "I can't believe this kind of story. How on earth can you do such a thing and still remain invisible? I'm disappointed." Stanley Maratha from Nairobi, Kenya exclaimed, "Africans only need a revolution of minds." And last but not least, a lot of our viewers were really impressed by our multi-talented colleague at VOA, Mestawet Shumir. She's not only a broadcaster, but an actress and a violinist. Danny Moon Haptimariam in Munich, Germany, wrote, "She is an example for women." Mickey Yeget said, Mr. White is a talented actress and people adored her voice when she was in Ethiopia. Well, thank you very much for your comments. Now, every week we will profile a few of them, so keep them coming. And check out our Facebook each day. Our show is streamed live. Let us know what you think about the stories we cover. Send me a tweet at VOA Vince Macquarie. Now, coming up, could a new initiative in Kenya boost the agriculture sector? Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
Dried flowers are put into a plastic bucket, then covered with boiling water. Vegetable oil is added and then shaken, all part of the process of making bars of soap in Kyrgyzstan. Myramkul Mayreva is a local entrepreneur. She says, we make soap from sea buckthorn for eczema. Also, calendula, nettle, chamomile are good for the skin. The shaker salmon soap is based on an ancient recipe. With the help of Japanese investment, women make and sell the all-natural ingredient soap throughout the country. The soaps are good for dry skin. Some are made with goat's milk, but the village has always been known for its soaps and creams. Agawa Masasumi is the soap project advisor. He says the soaps are in big demand from tourists. The women carve and wrap about 100 bars of soap a day, and they sell for about $2 a bar. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Well, Kenyan coffee has an international reputation for good quality, but Kenya's coffee industry is struggling as production levels have dropped and the younger generation shows little interest in farming. VOA's Daniel Chav reports from Kirinyaga County in Kenya.
Kenyan coffee is well known for its quality. But since the 1980s, coffee production has dropped by 2/3.
The German school in Nairobi, when I was there in 1980, 82, when I went to school there, it was surrounded by coffee fields. We were doing sports competitions around there in the coffee field. And now there's a shopping mall, there's houses, there's everything, so we have to go really up country to find now the next coffee trees.
Volatile coffee prices, corrupt brokers, and disease discouraged investment. Coffee yields fell to 2 kilos per tree, a fifth of what they once were, and fewer of Kenya's younger generation stayed on the farm.
After independence, what happened is people were looking for more white-collar jobs rather than the farm. The farm was seen to be like a peasant kind of affair. It was seen to be a poor man's business.
Martin Meredi Alexander wants his children to continue working the family farm. But he admits their education could take them elsewhere.
The government may employ them with the time, but at this time, they are working on my coffee farm.
Kenya is slowly running out of coffee farmers.
Most of the youth in the market, they are doing nothing. They are idling, seated. So when they turn back to the farm, their living standard will be improved. So I try and encourage them to come back to the field.
Since 2014, Kenya's coffee production has been rising, but slowly. Improving productivity is key to showing Kenyan youth that coffee farming can be profitable, says Peter Kamata.
Moving the trees from producing 2 kilos, from producing 1.5 kilos, moving them to 5 kilos, moving them to 7 kilos, moving them to 15 kilos, moving them to 30 kilos, whereby now, with high productivity, there is better return on investment.
Disease-resistant coffee trees and farmer training is helping, but better implementation is needed, or else Kenyan coffee risks losing its significance to bigger producers, warned Stefan Kantz.
Countries like Vietnam or China can serve as an inspiration that people see that it's possible. And then you have to find the African way, the Kenyan way, or the Côte d'Ivoire way to move towards that.
The question is whether the investment of time and money on the farm is a cost that Kenya's younger generation is willing to pay. Daniel Sheriff, VOA News, Kirinyaga County, Kenya.
French President Emmanuel Macron's groundbreaking vow to return colonial-era artifacts to Africa may face its first test next week when he holds talks in Paris with his Beninese counterpart, Patrice Talon. At issue are treasures from the former kingdom of Dahomey, which ended up in French museums and private collections. Now, if the Macron government makes good on its promises, experts say it might prove a tipping point for other European countries facing similar restitution demands. But as Lisa Bryant reports from Paris, the practicalities of repatriation are both complicated and controversial.
Over the years, the Quai Branly Museum in Paris has featured exhibits like this one, illustrating historic injustices through art, such as racism in the United States. But like others in Europe, France's top public museum for African art is now looking inward, considering whether injustice also prevails in its own collection. In Ouagadougou last November, French President Emmanuel Macron said Africa's cultural heritage could no longer remain in European museums and private collections. Over the next 5 years, he said, artifacts in France must be temporarily or permanently returned to Africa, a vow that has sparked debate.
Mr. Macron, the debate has started in France, so each of the museums needs to have a look at their own collections and identify pieces which may have been trafficked illegally or which may have come out of some dubious circumstances during colonialism.
In 2016, Benin became the first African country to ask for its artifacts back. Several thousand pieces taken from the former kingdom of Dahomey by French soldiers and missionaries. Many ended up at Quai Branly. The argument that the art is now French property is rejected by Beninese like Marie-Cécile Zinsou, whose foundation promotes African art.
Benin heritage is shown in France, it's shown in New York, it's shown in London, it's shown in Berlin. The only place where you can't see it is Benin. The French, they left with everything.
There's also a powerful economic dimension. Art attracts tourists like the millions coming to Paris each year.
If you want tourists to come to your country, you need to have a cultural legacy. And how can you do that when most of your legacy has been robbed by many people in the Western countries?
But restitution questions are unsettling some people. Critics argue African art is now universal patrimony, and many African countries don't have the facilities to house old and fragile artifacts. Others believe these issues can be resolved. A group of Paris galleries, for example, built a small museum in Benin, donating art from their own collections.
Is it a national treasure for France, or is it a national treasure for Africa? Both. The problem is to show the thing to the people, to the mass.
Benin may become the first country to put Macron's promise into practice, which means the art of Dahomey may finally be going home. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Paris.
And it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, the latest dazzling video from the Senegalese rapper OMG. We'll be right back.
So to me, this marks a new beginning for our country.
And we say that the divide ends here.
Suffering from acute severe malnutrition or at risk of dying. Effective
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. British boxer Nicola Adams was turned into a Barbie doll for International Women's Day. Adams, who has twice won Olympic gold medals, is the first UK star to join Barbie's Hero range designed to honor inspiring women. The manufacturer, Mattel, says it chose Nicola because of her outstanding contributions to boxing. Barbie has also introduced their Inspiring Women doll line, a range celebrating inspirational historical figures. Their first three dolls are Mexican artist Frida Kahlo, female aviator Amelia Earhart, and NASA mathematician Katherine Johnson. Next up, the strange-looking tire might be the answer to the mounting pollution on our roads. At the Geneva Motor Show, Goodyear is showing Oxygen, a smart tire that is able to clean air through photosynthesis. Oxygen absorbs moisture from the road through its unique tire tread and inhales CO2 from the air to feed the living moss in its sidewall. It's claimed that in a city about the size of Paris, with about 2.5 million vehicles, widespread use of these tires would generate almost 3,000 tons of oxygen and absorb over 4,000 tons of carbon dioxide a year. It's 3D printed with rubber from recycled tires, meaning less waste too. And finally, Michelle Obama met with 2-year-old Parker Curry after a photo of the little girl staring in awe at the official portrait of the former U.S. First Lady went viral last week. The former First Lady documented their meeting on her Instagram account with a video of the two dancing. The photo of the 2-year-old staring at the official portrait was snapped by Ben Hines of North Carolina. Hines posted the picture on his Facebook profile, and it quickly went viral. And that's what's trending today. Now, Edgecourt, the world's third largest manufacturer and distributor of agricultural machinery, has launched a new agribusiness initiative in Kenya. The new initiative, Edgecourt Agribusiness Qualification, is geared towards accelerating the development of African agriculture through providing agri-focused skills and knowledge and increasing employment in the agriculture sector. To tell us more about the initiative, Gary Kohler, Edgecourt Global Senior Vice President and Asia Pacific and Africa, joins me live via Skype from Seattle in Washington State. Welcome to our program, Mr. Gary Kohler.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to be on.
Yes. Now, you just returned from Africa. Help us understand exactly what you're providing in this initiative in order to help African countries boost their agricultural productivity.
We have partnered with the Strathmore Business University in Nairobi, Kenya. And through that partnership, what we're offering is skills training for a group of already graduated university students to give them a specific qualification in agribusiness. It's not just about training on agronomy and that type of thing. It's really about agronomy training plus commercial plus marketing training to understand how they take their crop to the next level and their productivity and commercial success to the next level as well.
How do you navigate in a terrain where people have a kind of smallholder kind of agricultural land rather than like big mechanized farming enterprises?
Well, first, it's important to understand that mechanization is just as important or even more important for a smallholder than it is for a big enterprise. But what works well, we believe, is a consortium or a co-op arrangement where you put a number of farmers together to work together in order to be more productive and drive more yield in their crops.
Now, many people in Africa used to think industrialization, more of their big machine manufacturing is the way to go. How do you convince people that this has a future in Africa? Agriculture is the way.
Well, for sure, agriculture is the major provider of jobs throughout Africa. Africa, more than any continent in the world, needs food and needs food security. Mechanization is a big part of that. Again, we're not just talking about big major farms, but we do believe that you can bring farmers together to be more productive and drive a more realistic commercial success out of their businesses.
Do you intend to roll this across the continent?
Yes, exactly. We're starting in Kenya. And we also have some major investments in Zambia as well as in Northern Africa. But looking at what we see as the major gap, which is that skills training and commercial training, we believe that we can really drive success throughout the whole continent.
Well, Mr. Carlo, I want to thank you very much for joining us today, sharing those insights with us.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Well, Gary Carlo is Edgecourt Senior Vice President, Asia Pacific and Africa. And I want to leave you with Koti Koti. It is the latest music video released by Senegalese rapper Oumi Gay, best known as OMG. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night. Have a great weekend.
My baby, sama xol bi yaa ko moom sama yéene di ñu dundu ba say am ci doom ñuy koti koti yoli yoli li ci suuka du xorom réero nga gini ma bira way ni sa waye biri ma réero nga gini ma waye ni sa waye biri ma koti koti yoli sa loxo sama nopp lingana matamale kati kati yali saloxo sama nopp dima yali yali kati lingana matamale kuci am sa kati kati de ko yali yali kuci am sa kati kati de ko yali yali kuci am sa kati kati de ko yali yali kuci am sa kati kati de ko yali yali sama gel nga ma ñamal sama xol bi nga këf ma ma sonal seytaane yi nañu musal yaay sama messi dama bëgg nga may dal di la xalaat dire fekk nga ma we ñi naan damay jële nañ ma cappe doy nga xarit doy nga àndandoo bu ma ñëpp bàyyee naa la dese mag yow ci xale réero nga gini ma tira way ni sa waye biri ma réero nga gini ma I'm so koti koti de ko yali yali Gucci I'm so koti koti de ko yali yali Gucci I'm so koti koti de ko yali yali lu dax neex lu dax neex
Welcome to English in a Minute. Lots of items are made from gold, like jewelry, coins, and medals.
Golden opportunity.
This sounds like a strange thing to be made of gold.
Jonathan, are you as excited as I am about the holiday next week?
I might be more excited. The holiday is a golden opportunity for me to catch